Meanwhile, we're here with our mayor in Battle Creek, Dave Walters. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here this morning, Richard.
Thank you for coming. Sorry, we're not trying to sweat you out in here, I promise.
That's okay. It's fine.
Our air conditioner in this room is on the fritz today. I thought about bringing in the air-conditioned seats from my Lakeview Ford Taurus, but I thought Vince might not like that if I took them out.
Like that. We would like that, but he wouldn't.
Right. We would like that. He may not. So we didn't do it. Don't worry, Vince. Okay. So here we are. You are just back from a whirlwind trip.
I am.
Where did you go?
We visited China, and I went there on mayoral business, and part of the team that I went with was Ted Deering, who's the Assistant City Manager for Economic Development.
Mm-hmm.
He left approximately 2 weeks ago on a Sunday morning and came back late Thursday night, early Friday morning.
And the purpose of this trip?
The purpose of this trip is just so exciting. It started about 2 years ago where a gentleman in Battle Creek named Hee Kwan Lee, who runs a martial arts business, obviously has connections to South Korea and such. Mm-hmm. And so he was approached by an investor from Los Angeles and a company called the UC Group about bringing South Korean students to the city of Battle Creek, as many as 500 at a time, to study international studies in a partnership with Western Michigan University and Kellogg Community College.
Oh, my goodness. So this is a tremendous undertaking. Was this confirmed that this will happen?
You know what? Great question. And when we made the trip to China, the reason that connection exists is the gentleman and the group that's representing South Korea also has this deal, if you will, going on in China. So China then was interested about piggybacking this through the same UC group. So, yes, we went there to visit twofold. One is to visit the university that's being built there by the South Koreans with the help of the Chinese. And then we needed to get the Chinese government's approval for this to happen, because China says, well, we'd like to send up to 500 students as well. So there's a chance, it looks really good, that starting maybe a year, if not a year and a half away from now, we'll have as many as 1,000 students living in Battle Creek and taking classes.
Very interesting. Mayor Dave Walters with this new information today. We'll come back and talk about some of the details in just a minute. 8:30. Okay, Mayor Dave Walters is here. We're talking about a new program that connects Battle Creek with China and South Korea. Students coming here to study. Very interesting.
You know what is really interesting? And if you look at the economic side of it, this is not us as the United States sending, development there. Yeah. This truly is bringing something from the Far East, if you will, to Battle Creek. So it's going to help our economy. It's going to help these students. It's going to help the enrollment at Western Michigan University as well as KCC, and talk about diversifying our downtown, because that seems to be where the South Koreans and the Chinese would like to locate as far as keeping their students here.
Mm-hmm. How did we get this? Was this a competition, or was it just by virtue of this connection that we had?
Great question. The connection was the lead, obviously, and we actually brought some people in from South Korea and Los Angeles a couple of years ago, but it just didn't go well, that visit, I should say, and so we wanted to stay on it. And what had happened was Marion, Indiana, was actually looked at a location as well, but they were taken out of the running. We became one of the focused areas at that point.
What were they looking for in making a choice?
Great question again, Richard. It was they wanted kind of Midwestern town. They were looking at somewhere between Chicago and Detroit, where the students could get a kind of a wholesome living atmosphere, if you will, in Battle Creek, and then they could branch out if they wanted to travel and do things and, recreation beyond what Battle Creek may have to offer.
That's interesting. So there must have been some sense that a smaller community had some kind of benefit that they were looking for, as opposed to just situating them in L.A. or New York or Chicago.
That's correct. And they're taking this so serious. The South Koreans are working with the Chinese, and during our trip over there, we were able to visit like a university the size of Davenport College that was here in Battle Creek, and they built a dorm right next to it. So the Chinese will actually have students attend that school and live in those dorms, 500 at a time, to prep themselves for 3 to 6 months to then come over to the United States to study.
Oh, wow. So speaking of that, do we have a place for them to stay?
Well, we're working on that. The South Korean delegation has been here 3 or 4 different times, and they even came last week. And we are looking at different buildings in Battle Creek, lots to build on, whatever it may be. So the South Koreans are going to bring in students as well as help with the infrastructure, and the Chinese will then bring the students here.
So are there connections you can see here for business somehow with these students? Internships maybe, or some other sort of way?
Absolutely. It depends what you read, but this has been going on around the world a little bit. There's several other sites in the United States. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. But 17 to 22% of the students that will come over here to study, whether it be English as a second language or international studies and finish their bachelor's or master's degrees, stay. And they usually stay somewhere close to the area where the schools are.
Interesting. So they would then be taking some courses at KCC, some at Western.
Absolutely. Depends on their majors and what their goals are, but these are going to be college students, not high school or below.
Right. Okay. So international students, I mean, there's certainly a contingent of those already at Western and nearby, but this bolsters that.
It certainly does. And to have Western in our backyard and in our city as well, they were highly interested in the School of Aviation. They thought that was fantastic, and especially the South Koreans and the way that they might be able to use that through what's called Kyungpak University, is the university we're dealing with out of South Korea.
Wow, what a neat idea. So this trip then was supposed to be fact-finding, but if we stick with the aviation thing, got some lift here, didn't it?
We did. We got some air, right? And what happened was the assistant city manager, Ted Deary, and I, we went there to kind of pitch this, if you will, to the Chinese government, and also to see what progress they're making on the school at that location. So we did have a formal meeting with the Chinese government, and rather than having to pitch it, listen, and then them get back with us later, they were prepared after the presentations and such. We signed a letter of agreement with them where they're going to do this.
Just pulled the trigger right away.
They did, absolutely.
How did you find the interaction, particularly with the Chinese? I mean, we hear so much about, the communist China, but we have begun to see the walls come down a little bit in terms of business relationships and things of that nature. How did you find it?
I found them very open and welcoming to us. The entire trip was controlled, meaning, we weren't really allowed to sightsee on our own. So we would wake up in the morning, and the whole day, the itinerary was planned almost to the minute to see some tourism spots, visit some of the universities, and then eventually meet with the communist government, who they were welcoming, but, of course, very businesslike.
Interesting. And interpreters and tour guides and things of that nature.
Absolutely. Interpreters assigned to us, as well as their own official government interpreters. And so we were able to, I hope, that everything was translated properly.
Right. Mayor Dave Walters is with us, a connection to the Far East for Battle Creek. We'll come back with more in just a moment on WBCK 8. Okay, Mayor Dave Walters is here telling us breaking news, really, about a new agreement to bring students from China and South Korea to our area to study international studies. So these students then are looking for a degree. And interestingly, as you said, the interactions were controlled, but yet China is willing to send students to the United States and expose them to our culture.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note that they were willing to build the infrastructure over there and the buildings and just the surrounding area as well, even for just a prep school.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that. I've never been to China before, but they don't look at English as a second language, so much like you might travel other places in the world. So they looked at that as, with the South Korean delegation working with them, this UC group, that would be really fantastic to have those students prepped in time to do that. So the goal would be, it'll probably start out slower.
Okay.
We won't all of a sudden, boom, get 500 from each country. But we're looking as early as next fall. at least have the South Korean delegation in place, and some of their students. So we're going to ease into that. But the 1,000 number is the one that they've batted around, not us, which we would look to see happen in 2018 as an example.
Okay. So some phased in that would begin in 2016 or 17?
2017, actually, yes.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. All right. We'll look forward to hearing more progress on that.
You bet. I'll keep you informed with that.
All right. We know that you spend a lot of time on a bicycle. This is something you enjoy, and we imagine that that story from Kalamazoo was really tough to hear with this incident involving the bicyclists who were killed or injured.
It certainly was. I was traveling overseas at the time. I was able to have limited contact with the United States through texting and such. So I did hear about it. And, obviously a horrific accident. I feel so bad for the Kalamazoo, Augusta area where these folks were from. And I have reached out to their administration over there upon my return regarding this. That is a group. Those riders are part of the group with the Kalamazoo River Valley Trail,
right?
Who we're working with right now to try to link Galesburg to Battle Creek. So the names and faces were familiar. I did know one of the individuals through that work, but obviously we're very sorry about that. When
you're on a bicycle, doing what you do recreationally, are these concerns that are legitimate, that we have to be particularly mindful of vehicles around us and that sort of thing?
Oh, we certainly do. And I've seen things evolve in the last few years where daylight hours, like myself, if I do ride on the road, bike lane or not, I kind of look like a UFO. I've got, red lights flashing in the back, a headlight flashing or solid in the front. You try to wear the bright colors, but obviously you can do all those things and still something can happen, can go wrong. Not always the cyclist's fault, not always the driver's fault, but they still do happen because we do share the road with the vehicles.
Some of the reaction to this that I saw had to do with what I interpreted to be a long-standing notion that drivers of vehicles are not always as mindful as they could be of bicyclists on the roads that they travel. Is that true? Do you feel that sense that those of us driving cars could be more appreciative of those folks?
Yes, I think it goes both ways, but particularly the people that are seasoned riders know to stay to the right and follow all those rules and stop at the stop signs and stoplights, and they have the same responsibilities as a driver. I'd be lying if I didn't say that distracted driving, for whatever reason, is a big issue right now regarding, and not just cyclists. It might be somebody using their motorized scooters along the road, or a jogger, or a family walking, whatever it may be. But we've got to keep pushing this education level that we truly, truly need to share that road.
Yeah, and we hope that message gets through. Obviously, we don't know all of the details yet with this particular situation, but you do begin to, with social media and such, begin to absorb some of that reaction pretty quickly, and that was some of the thoughts I was hearing about that. Do you think that we'll see changes around here as it relates to bike lanes and things like that? I mean, how much of an effort is there out there to make those more available?
In Battle Creek, there is an effort. There's actually a policy in place that as roads are being rebuilt, widened, whatever it may be in the city of Battle Creek, that bike lanes are going to be part of that.
Okay.
In our committee that's been around for 3.5 years now, has really bumped up the education side of this. Team Active and Mike Wood as an example. He's personally out and about teaching, awareness classes and such. Once again, both for the riders as well as the drivers.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to more of that.
Yes.
Mayor Dave Walters, thanks for the updates on all fronts. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you. I hope we do.
8:28.